Hi, everyone. Today, I'm excited to speak with Chris Carter. Chris is a successful entrepreneur, venture investor, startup advisor, and now the managing director of innovation and entrepreneurship at the Schulich School of Business, which is consistently ranked as the number one business school in Canada. Chris is a rarity amongst any entrepreneurs in the world today. He's not only a successful entrepreneur, but has scaled his experience in helping entrepreneurs as an investor and advisor and went into academia as well as a professor and is now using that platform to help entrepreneurs across Canada. And today, I think Chris has invaluable experience to share with us about how to build a startup and what to do, what not to do, and we'll get into it. Chris, thank you much for joining me today. Tell us, there's a lot more to say about your resume, but I'll let you walk through some of your background and experience first.
Great. Well, I started off as a journalism student from Metropolitan University, and when I graduated, there were no jobs. I wanted to create my own job, and I created a magazine. But at that time, I couldn't afford paper mache. It was like $10,000 to run one small issue of my publication, and would have wiped me out. But thankfully, that was right at the cusp of the commercial internet. And I had a friend of mine, a great technical mind, and I've made a career on partnering with really brilliant technical people. Had the idea that we would not need any paper anymore in the future. And with that decision, we put the publication online, and it all started from there.
That's crazy because today we think the internet is an obvious thing, but it wasn't, especially this was in the 90s, right?
Yeah, this was 1995. My friends kind of rallied around me and said, like, we think this thing is a fad and you're about to do something really reckless with your career. But being a little bit stubborn, I went ahead and launched the magazine. And within only probably like 3 years, it was rather popular. And we sold it to Telemedia, the sports radio network, and it became the website for the Fan 590 across Canada.
Wow, that's crazy. So this was called ThinData, or
That ThinData was the company. The sports publication was called The Competitor, and it was a play on words. It was a sports term, but also a competitor to traditional media.
that's pretty interesting. So, what insight did you have in the mid '90s that the internet was going to be a big thing to kind of take that risk when everyone was telling you, "Hey, this is you're throwing away your career"?
Yeah, like originally the impetus was that I didn't want to write that check for $10,000. So that was the beginning. But when the first night that I saw the internet was at my business partner, my CTO, Chancellor's his name, and I had to hunt him down through the phone book, if you could believe it, right? We talk to the students these days about how, all the things we have access to generate co-founders and find people, and there's whole platforms for this. Well, back then, we didn't have mobile phones. Many of us didn't have email accounts, no LinkedIn, no Facebook, no Twitter, no Instagram, all these things that connect us now.
And what'd you do with all your
I
time?
had, well, in this case, I
Oh
sat with the
goodness.
phone book for 4 days calling Crawford's because we had worked somewhere together and then parted ways. And that was the only way I could find him in the city of Toronto. And I called for 4 days. And the day I finally found him, I found his mom, and she picked up the phone and said, "Yeah, that's my son, Chancellor. Would you like to talk to him?" And I went over and he showed me the internet for the first time. And I think it just like was a world of wonder and possibility when I saw it. And I think what I was very fortunate for was that I was looking at it from the mind of just this freshly minted journalism student who was thinking about content and stories and how to like spread information in a unique way. And those two worlds, just like I looked at it and I kind of felt I saw so much of it in that moment, standing there in his bedroom and him showing me the internet as to what we could do. And we went into business together that night, shook hands, and agreed that we would build this thing, and each one of us would never take a penny more than the other one out of the business. And away we went and started it on the fly.
So, tell us about building that and selling it. How did you get to a point within 3 years, which is pretty incredible, to build a successful business and then sell it, then making the decision to sell it, and then what happened after, of
Yeah,
course?
what I've collected a lot of really interesting mentors in my life, and now I spend a lot of time doing that. But back then, I had really interesting mentors I collected in my early 20s. And one of them was a well-known politician, lawyer, and had some business experience as well. And he gave me this lesson really early on. He sat me down at a cafe on Parliament Street, and he said, "Chris, one of the most important things I've learned by watching other businesses is that the biggest opportunity that you're going to have is not the opportunity that you started out with. It's probably a business that's going to walk right in front of your eyes in the middle of building the first one. Nowadays we would call that pivoting and like having, but back then that was just like it's going to pass in front of your eyes and you need to see it when it's there. So selling the sports magazine and the competitor was really something that happened because while all kinds of people were reading the publication all over the world, the advertising community had not caught up to it yet. So they weren't ready to spend money. But what happened was while we were out showing the publication to other people as potential advertisers, they would say, I don't really want to advertise on your publication, but wow, I love this thing that you created. Could you build one for me?
Hmm.
And I'll pay you. And that sounded like paying the rent, and that sounded like eating, and that sounded like actually building something that would be sustainable. So we started taking contracts, building websites and building applications for people on the side. Eventually, this became such a significant business to us that we then had the opportunity where we were like, we don't really have time anymore to work on the magazine. We need to take it somewhere. So through a friend, I got an opportunity to take it in and show it to the programming director at the Fan, and we pitched him on it. You know, we asked for back then. It was very early, and of course, we were in our like apartment, and we were barely like able to eat at that point in time. So we asked for $600,000 to sell it. And we thought that was more money than we had ever seen in our lives as two kids, growing up without a lot of wealth. And they said, well, we could give you $300,000. So we said, well, we want the 600, but we'll do a deal. We'll take 300,000 in cash. We'll take 300,000 in radio advertising. And we took the radio ads and we then promoted our web development business. And it was one of the first web development businesses in Toronto that was actually advertised anywhere. And so that business started to grow. And then down the road, we'll continue the story. But we made another major revelation and we left that business behind to create what ThinData eventually became.
Oh, that's interesting. So this is like real bootstrapping, which is kind of a dirty word with entrepreneurs today. But you actually built this thing without taking a lot of external capital. And by the time you did, even adjusted for inflation, which was quite high, of course, was quite a low amount of money, $300,000 and then 300 in kind, right, in advertising. So when I did my own little research on ThinData, it seems like you were and I maybe going a couple steps ahead, but you were like the first Survey Monkey type business in Canada, really, the largest one. So I'm really curious how that journey happened, like from the sports magazine to the web development to, this digital marketing, kind of automated digital marketing, which was back then. I mean, even 10 years ago was still kind of nascent, but certainly 20 years ago was revolutionary, so to
Yeah,
speak.
well, I talked about having different mentors. And so another one of my mentors was a gentleman named Alan Barkin. And for those of us who live in the city, we'll know that there's a big, giant yellow building on the 401 called Jiffy Self Storage. And Alan is such a promoter. He painted that building yellow just so everybody would see it as they were driving down the highway. But he owned businesses all over the city. And he was one of my early web development clients. One day he said to me, Chris, I want to teach you something about business, and I'm going to take you to show you my favorite business. And he gave me this address. It was in the distillery district. Now it's all fancied up in the distillery district, but back then it was very industrial. So he took me there and he walked me into the parking lot, and there was a giant sign that was overlooking the highway. And he walked up to the sign, he kicked the post on the sign, and he said, do you see this sign? I said, yes. He says, this sign pays me $50,000 per month in my pocket. And all I have to do is come here and kick the post once a month just to make sure it's still there. Chris, you need to build a business like that. So this was his message was you're doing all these projects and you're building all these things for people. But, nowadays we all chase, annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue. This was his message to me is you need to build something that creates cash while you sleep. So we were always on the lookout for that and thinking about, where would that business be? And of course, the first lesson that I learned was to always keep your eyes open for what comes in front of you. So what we realized was that at a certain point in the internet's development, our web development clients started walking in or calling us and saying, we would like to make an email newsletter. We would like to communicate outbound to all our clients as opposed to just waiting for them to show up at our website every day, which they're not going to do on their own. Could you help us with that? Do you think there is a good application out there? How do you rank them, Chris and Chancellor? What do you think we should use? Which one's your favorite? So we started doing research on that. And what we found was that we didn't have a favorite because we thought they all had major flaws in how they were being built. And number two, we thought they were incredibly expensive. At one point in time, a client who we had a very close relationship with came in and said, "Hey, I just got off the phone with one of the largest email marketing companies in Canada at the time." And he said, "I had a really brutal conversation. They were super rude to me on the phone. I didn't enjoy or appreciate the conversation at all. And they told me, and you can believe this, that they were going to charge me $200,000 a year to send 15,000 emails per
Oh my
month."
God.
Now, this is a different era, of course, right? And now that might be a free account somewhere on MailChimp or something like that. But at the time, that's what it was going to cost. And I think the bigger part was that they treated him very rudely on the phone. Well, they didn't know that this gentleman was like a really brilliant Bay Street executive. And he didn't appreciate what had been done in that conversation. So he came to us and said, "I have an idea. Why don't I cut my cost in half? I'll give you guys $100,000. You guys build an email marketing application. You can own it. Just let me send free email for the rest of my life." And that was actually our first angel investor in a way. It wasn't an investor in equity, but it was an investor through being a client. And that unlocked this opportunity where we said, well, now we know the demand is within our own client roster. We had about 200 web development clients at the time. And we know now that this guy is like ready to help us to get it off the ground. We took one engineer, put him in a room, got a whiteboard, and literally drew the application on the whiteboard with a bunch of arrows, everything that it did, and where all the emails went and where they got reported on, and just said, "Build this. We're going to go back and work on the web development company. We'll check in on you at the end of every day and see how far you've gotten." And that was the beginning of what became the largest email marketing platform in the country.
Wow, that's an incredible story. A lot of lessons there. So you lock the engineer in the room. That's the
Well, the key was in locking him in the room was that, in an organization with competing interests, right, and competing, product paths, we needed to make sure that the people in charge of the web development production didn't go kidnap him in the middle of the day and take him off, right, to go work on this other
right,
project. So we
right,
had to lock him aside. This lesson eventually of like, making sure that your most precious resources and minds are focused on the highest value future opportunity for the company is something that would come back over and over again. And eventually we had a reminder of that from another mentor. His name, he's since passed away, but his name was David Pico, and he was the head of the Boston Consulting Group in Canada.
mhm,
He was kind enough to spend some time with us. And when he looked at our business as the email platform was starting to emerge, and but the web development platform was still dominant, he said, "Chris, I want you to go back to the office for the next 2 weeks. I want you to get yourself a notepad and a pen, and I want you to record your top, 50% of your staff. Figure out who you consider them to be. And then I want you to record how much time they're spending on your original core business versus the new thing, which is like the real future upside for you and your company. And then I want you to come back in 2 weeks and tell me where their percentage of time is being spent." So, of course, in 2 weeks, I had to come back with my head held low and explain that currently they were only spending really 10% of their time in the new business, in the new opportunity. Now, a lot of people would say on the surface, that's a moment where you should like sell the first thing and then like concentrate on the other one, right? But David was even more provocative and he said, "I want you to give away your core business."
oh my goodness,
And I was like, "What do you mean give it away?" I was like, at that point, it was a couple $1 million worth of revenue, which was like sustaining all the stuff we were doing and building. And he was like, "I want you to give it away." I said, "Can't I sell it?" He said, "If you sell it, it's only going to be a distraction going through the actual transaction. It's going to consume your next 2 years. You're going to be responsible for transitioning all the web development accounts to the acquirer. And ultimately, it's not actually going to be worth what it would be to literally burn the ships at the shore and go for, just like releasing the clients from their contracts on a notice period." So as we were this small company with $2 million in revenue, I called the entire client roster and gave them 8 months notice that they were all being released from their contracts. We were out of the web development business as of that point of time. We were happy to have them stay and be part of the email marketing company. But after 8 months, we were no longer providing those services. Made that announcement to the staff in the company, told them that in 8 months, we had no revenues left in the business because we were releasing all the clients and focusing on the email, and that we all needed to now build that business. Everyone got behind that. The clients were extremely reasonable about understanding the situation because I didn't send out a mass email. I phoned them all personally, one by one, and from there we bloomed, and we wound up having a roster of probably 250 of the largest email marketing accounts that were in the country, big enterprise accounts. Aeroplan, Air Canada, Shoppers Drug Mart, the major banks, television networks, huge retailers, all on board with what we were doing. And then eventually we sold the business in 2008.
Can you share how big that business became before it was sold and some numbers around that? It's not
Yeah,
confidential.
yeah, yeah. So when we sold the business, we were about a team of 60 people, and we had grown it over a 4 or 5 year period from being the 2 million of web and maybe like an opening 150,000 in annual recurring revenue of email. And when we sold the business, we were $7 million of annual recurring revenue, which was on the email space, and then some professional services as well too. And then yeah, and then we sold it, and we sold it for just under $20 million cash, and moved on to the next stages of our lives.
That's incredible. I mean, that story about not just pivoting, which is what you did, of course, but doing it in such a way to just shut down this other business that was generating real revenue. And I'm sure it was done at decent margins and at least funding all the other development you were doing. That's a bold move.
It was a extremely bold and terrifying move at the time, but we really had the trust of our staff and the trust of the partnership. And I wish he was here with us today because David Pico was a remarkable human being. And even our access and time to David was a lesson for us. We did a lot of volunteer work in the community, and this is how we met many of the most influential people in our lives. So we were volunteering on one of David's big charities, and at the end of one of the meetings, we asked him if we could have a little time to get some advice. And he took us to his office, and we thought we were going to get 15 minutes of chit chat time. And instead, he pulled out his calendar and he said, "Here's a date in 4 weeks from now. I want you to come to my home in Rosedale. You're going to have like 6 hours with me at my kitchen table." This is the head of the Boston Consulting Group for the country. We're going to have 6 hours at my kitchen table. Bring your business plan. We're going to figure out the future of the company. And in that meeting, not only did we make some of those decisions, including the decision around releasing the clients from their contracts, David Pico even named the acquirer in that meeting 4 years in advance and said who would buy the company.
Wow. Guess when you have that much experience, you can seem like you can see the future, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty incredible. And then, okay, so you sell that business, you have all this incredible experience, and then you go and invest in startups, right?
Yes, yes,
And you help them grow as well. I mean,
yes.
it seems obvious maybe to me to, hey, I have a little bit of cash, sold my business. Let me actually go help other startups. But I think to most people, that's not an obvious thing to do. You think maybe just go retire, right? Or
Right.
why do you decide to go back into the game of helping other startups?
You know, it's funny, like literally within days of fulfilling my commitment to the company that acquired us, I was already like feeling like I can't just sit here. I have to go out and I have to go and like get back into, the space and working with people. Matan, if I have like one regret in my life, I think that when I sold my company, I talked to many entrepreneurs about this now that have sold their companies. And some of them that do sell their companies within the ecosystem, I proactively call them and ask them if I could have lunch with them, go sit and talk with about what is about to happen for them once they've sold. I think I should have like slowed down. I should have calmed down. I should have taken a deep pause. I should have reinvested back into family and back into spirituality and back into like grounding myself as opposed to feeling like I had to rush out and do the next big thing. So that's also a period of time where I, became divorced and my family became fractured. And I've had to spend a lot of time trying to rebuild that back together post that period of time. So I really sit down and talk with those entrepreneurs and ask them, like, what is it that they really want now and what do they want from the rest of their life, and is it just to go chase more cash and chase more business, or is it something different? And really interesting private conversations that we have as a result of that, based on I feel an obligation to do for them what nobody really did for me at that point. But at that point in time, what I knew that I did love was working with entrepreneurs and I created a number of different companies. One day, I had the opportunity where I was called upon by, and these things are all connected, called upon by the former right hand of David Pico at the Boston Consulting Group, was married to a Schulich instructor, Graham Deans, who teaches mergers and acquisitions at the school. And because I'd sold my company, Graham asked me to come and guest lecture in his class up at the Schulich School of Business at York University. And I went and I loved it, Matan. It was like so much fun. The students were super engaged and I had an absolute blast. I got invited to come back again. And I guess there was enough of a buzz around the student, population that this was a lecture that you didn't want to miss. That I then got invited to come and help out with the Career Center at Schulich and come in once a month and start coaching people. Well, I did that and I was working on these other businesses that I was setting up with friends and getting going. But the one thing in the month that I really looked forward to was going and being at Schulich and working with the students on their business ideas. And I was saying one day to one of my friends in the ecosystem, Barry Hillier from EcoShift, who has built a number of different SaaS and agency businesses, saying, I really wish I could just go and like change everything and like be an academic, work at the school, work with the students. That's the best part of every month. And Barry is an amazing man, and he's also a little bit of a hippie. So he looked at me and he said, "You're never trapped, man." And in that moment, I was like, yeah, I'm not trapped. I can do anything I want to do with my life. I don't have to be defined by this like first half of my world. And I can look at like, what do I love and what do I want to, get? And people come up now and ask me, like, what's your goal? What's your mission? What's your dream? What drives you? What drives me is that I'm helping to create like a brilliant group. They're already like amazing on their own, but I'm powering up this brilliant wave of thousands and thousands of students that are going out into the world and making things and, thinking about the philosophies that I want to bring about how to be an entrepreneur in the world that respects community and like you actually have a purpose beyond your business and what you do. So um, I had the opportunity then when he said you're never trapped. I was like, yeah, I can go. I can just go do that. So the famous story at Schulich is that I went up to the school. I took my laptop. I sat in the cafe with nobody's permission or blessing, and I realized that they didn't have a full startup program. They had great entrepreneurial studies classes, but they didn't have a startup program to help all the students and the alumni create their companies. So I took my laptop. I went to the cafe, I opened it up, and like any good entrepreneur, anyone from the startup space, I just started building it without permission and without a contract and without payment for doing the work. And I told my friends and my family that my prediction is that in 8 months, that the dean of the school at that time, Dean Horvath, will come down from the third floor. He'll take me to lunch. He'll ask me what the heck is going on. And when I explain it to him, and he realizes that if I close my laptop and leave, that the startup program goes with me, then he'll hire me, and that's how I'll have my dream job. And and
That's
that's
great.
what I did, and that turned into the dean giving me the opportunity to go and build out this program. And now there are 200 Schulich startup companies that we're working with, and that have raised north of $60 million in the last 24 months. So it all starts from that moment again of like, there's no reason why we all can't find moments in life to remake ourselves if we have the opportunity.
That's a great story. I mean, there's so many things there. First, the lesson of most people think that the entrepreneurs that fail are the ones that need the help. They get depressed and they see their dreams shattered, which is true. It's obviously a very difficult thing to go through, and I've went through that myself. But I think nobody talks about what you just said of entrepreneurs that succeed and they have this drive and even now the confidence to kind of go back out there and do it again. And some of the downsides of that, like, hey, maybe you need to take a step back and focus on some of the things that may have been neglected while you're building this business, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do, right? So that's an incredible lesson, and it's great you're doing that for entrepreneurs that have succeeded and sold their business. Um, the other thing with academia, I mean, people don't know this. I graduated from the Schulich School of Business in 2011, so I remember when I was in school there, everyone's goal was to get an investment banking internship and then getting an investment banking job. Startups was not that exciting back then. It was all about investing being an investment banker which is basically a matchmaker for money. I respect what they do, but it's very different than being on the buy side, which is, actually deploying capital yourself or being responsible for that. And I was always an entrepreneur. And Schulich didn't have anything. I took a venture creation entrepreneurship class in my fourth year. It was the best time I had.
Yeah.
Great professors, great students, everything. We were looked at how to build a business, but there was nothing beyond that to take someone like me, someone that was ambitious and entrepreneurial, and then help guide them, connect them with the right people, and help them build a business, a real business. And I think you started this in what, 2014 or
Yep.
20?
And around 2014. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, when I learned about what you were doing, I was like, My goodness, why wasn't this there when I was a student? Who knows? I could have been a billionaire. Maybe, probably not. But
You're still a young man. So,
yeah.
you know,
So
it's funny because with all the programs that we've created since, and we can talk about some of those as well, um, the department now, which is called the Schulich Office of Innovation Entrepreneurship, or more, in the community known as Schulich Startups. We've created so many programs and been part of so many innovations that now the new dean, Dean Detlev Zwick, has created, like the MBA in technology leadership, and we're embedded in so many of those new things that literally every student group that graduates now is like deeply regretful that they're not in the next year. And it continues on year after year. And they're like, I wish that was there. I wish that was there. I wish that was there. And, what we just have to offer everybody is like the opportunity. You're still part of it. Now you're going to be part of it as alumni and as founders and as venture capital leaders or as technologists, and come back in and participate and keep building it. Yeah, but I can appreciate that.
yeah.
I wish we'd got to meet back then when you were a student too.
Just we've brought on co-ops or interns from your program, right? And these are students that get a degree, like they get a credits. They get credits from the university, from Schulich, to basically get experience in venture capital. And they're it's an incredible experience for them, and obviously it's helpful for us as employers, because these are very smart, hardworking, ambitious people. And not only do I enjoy helping them grow and learn, but they're helpful to us for our bottom line as well. And man, I wish I had
Yeah,
that.
when we created it, I mean, the program that you're referring to is called the Mentorship Match, Entrepreneurship 6960. And when we created that, the kind of the theory behind it was there are a lot of internships, there are a lot of co-ops, a lot of things. And while the students in those programs are getting experience and it's really good for them, often they will be assigned to work for, the another intern who's just been there for 6 more months than they have, or they will be assigned to do like very rudimentary work. So this concept was like, could we take 30 of the elite students from the school by interview and application? I interview them all, and then hand match them with leaders in the space, such as yourself, that are in venture capital or founders in their companies. And so the principle behind it is that there is a game changing learning experience that happens when they're in relationship with people like yourself, where you're giving them that insight as to like more like this, less like that. What if you approach that in a different way? Then they're also watching you lead within your team and within your company and within the community. And then also by building relationship with you, then they have access to your network and your endorsement as they go forward in their career. And so when we started it out, a lot of people said to me, like, you're never going to find like, all these like venture capital leaders and find all these founders that are going to want to do that and spend that much time and invest in the student relationship. And this is the same, I took the same philosophy, same way when I recruited my staff back at ThinData. I said, yeah, I agree. The vast majority of people won't want to do that, but I only need 30, right? I just need to find 30 amazing human beings who think this is a cool idea and want to do it. And if I can find the 30 and have a little bit of an overflow, like 30 to 50, because sometimes people have different things in their lives that become priorities on the mentor side, that's it. And it's going to make a really big dramatic change. And, some of these stories of some of these students are incredible. Like one of our students who was working with a leading venture capitalist in his placement. Now he's out 4 years from the school, and he's the chief financial officer of a publicly traded company in aerospace.
Wow.
And he directly attributes the things that happened in terms of the philosophies that we brought to him through the course and how he was able to see them applied in real time. So this student was matched with Kevin Kimsa, who's a well-known venture capitalist in the Canadian community. And Kevin walked in one day in the middle of the placement and told this student, or sorry, told the whole company, the whole venture firm, we're going to. I've been thinking a lot about what's happening in the world from an environment and ecosystem and future of the planet perspective, and I've decided that what we're investing in needs to change, and it needs to change now. And I don't want to be in the pumping SaaS B2B products into the world for commercial
He's a
consumption
heretic
anymore.
in
Yeah,
the VC world.
heretic.
Don't
Yeah.
do B2B SaaS. That's not
we're
acceptable.
we're 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 going to look at environment and social impact is where we need to lean in, and this is important, and more people need to do this. So Kevin made this announcement within the group, and then I think a lot of people were stunned. As I've heard the story told, I wasn't there, but a lot of people were stunned. A lot of people went home, and he said, "We're going to meet again the next morning and figure it out." Well, because of the approach and the philosophies that we've taken, and because of something that was inside him that just needed to be unlocked and given the opportunity, then this student, his name's Abhinav Singhvi, and so this student went home that night and worked all night with his friends and contacts in India, where he emigrated from, on Indian time zone, and produced a plan to walk in with the next morning to present to Kevin Kimsa. And when everyone was just coming for a chat in that group, Abhinav went in and waited at the door, asked for 5 minutes. Well, once Kevin saw what he had produced, he gave him like another 45 minutes to an hour and canceled his next phone call, and then walked in and talked about what Abhinav had created in front of the whole company.
Wow.
So when Abhinav then had his next job interview opportunity, and he was presented with in the interview with the opportunity with the company where he's now the CFO, with how he would achieve the growth that the company needs to achieve, his answer in the meeting was that he would take the company public. And then they asked him how he would do that, and then he said, "Give me 48 hours, and I'll come in and present you the plan." And as a newly graduated student, he went off, he came in with the plan and presented it and what would be done. And now there he is now as the CFO of a publicly traded company. And these are the kinds of things that through the greatness is already inside the students and the brilliance is inside the students. But the opportunity to be in relationship with incredible people in real moments where real decisions and opportunities are being pursued just allows that to come out of them and to burst forth into the universe.
That's great. That's a great story too, man. You have a lot of great stories. So tell us more about the programs that you have going on. So you started. What was the first program, and then how did it progress from there?
Yeah, the first program was really around how do we rally around the people that you described, which were everyone was off pursuing to become from Schulich an investment banker or an accountant or a management consultant. I think those
Hmm.
were the top three. But there was this incredible community of people in the startup and in the venture capital space that had gone on and built their businesses. So what we really needed to do was to create a place for them to come home, right? And so that's what we designed was a community with a series of events and volunteer opportunities and ways to come back into the classroom, and then to really help all the people within that community to be connected to each other and start helping each other. So that was like the foundation of what we built. And these days we don't go a week without another alumni reaching out online and saying, "I'm creating a company and I need your help." So it's really accelerating now at this point in terms of people getting involved. But then we created a series of different programs and supports. We knew in our case, York University has a formalized accelerator called Y Space. And it has a technology accelerator. There is an accelerator for Black founders. There is a women's accelerator as well too. And they do a phenomenal job and have a large portfolio of companies they're working with. In our case, we knew we weren't going to be able to build a full cohort style accelerator. And we had all these different ages and sectors and types of people at different stages in their growth. So we needed to design something that was really much more flexible, and I would say is more in a concierge model. So with if you look at the how we resource this, we have myself. I have two full-time team members that now work for me. I have a part-time entrepreneur in residence, and then I have an army of alumni. Probably about 300 engaged alumni now that are ready to help during the course of the year, and then a whole group of volunteer students who come in to help support and work on the companies through a variety of classes or just volunteer opportunities. And so now that group is behind solving and unlocking problems and puzzles for our startup founders that are part of the Schulich Startups community, and helping them to get more rapid acceleration in their business through network. And what better network to take advantage of than a 40,000 person alumni network with business leaders in every sector in every company in the world. So whether it is like insight into a particular perspective on sector, in that case, sometimes we'll bring in like a whole set of alumni that work in a particular sector, sit them down for a 3-hour session with the founder of that company, and the alumni will literally teach that student or grad how to attack their sector, right? How to price their sector, where the real value is inside what they're thinking. So we're always looking for opportunities to design programs that support and connect the alumni, the community to these founders as they go forward. And then over time, we could talk about as well some of the external programs we built with different partnerships, both in the region and also a really interesting one we built with the government of India and Startup India in a different part of the world.
Which programs are you most excited about right now?
Um, there's there's a lot going on. We're launching a lot on a regular basis, but let me give you my top two right now that I'm really excited about. The first one is called the Schulich Venture Academy, and the Schulich Venture Academy was designed on the concept that um, in the ecosystem there are a lot of really important supporting roles behind the founder that are required in order to scale up your company. And a lot of good time and excellent attention goes to working on the founder and goes to working on some of their senior team members. But what we think is that there is a real need as well to upskill and accelerate the talent that is within those companies as they're going to go up on their venture scale. So in the academy, for example, we have a talent stream, a capital stream, a finance stream, and an operation stream. And let me just give you the example of the talent stream for a moment. So the talent stream is being taught by Jenny DeForno, who is the chief people officer at Touch Bistro, who ran the talent portfolio for Omer's Ventures for a long time. And so she's designed her own course working with us on how to take a company when it's going from 20 staff to 40 staff to 60 staff to 100 to 200 to 500, and all the human resources and talent madness and anarchy that can unfold if you don't do that properly. But we like to talk a lot about product, and like to like to talk a lot about raising big sums of money, but we don't talk a lot in the ecosystem around these pieces and pillars
Hmm.
inside the company that have to be designed to grow properly along the way. So we created this thing called the Schulich Venture Academy, and we sell spots in it externally to professionals that are in the ecosystem. We launched our first cohort just on Monday, just this past Monday. The talent stream opened up, but all four streams are opening up this week. And we opened it up about 60 days ago, and we said we've got 40 spots. In 45 days, we had 46. We went over capacity in a couple of the classes, and we had to establish wait lists. And now people are giving their deposits to hold spots for the October cohort.
Wow.
So that's something we're proud of because we're really trying to like look through the ecosystem at the Schulich School of Business and not just copycat people and run down the same path that other programs have, but look at where are the weak spots in the ecosystem and how can we be part of supporting them, and also in a way that helps grow the office as well at the same time. The second one is that this year, Dean Levswick established the MBA in Technology Leadership at Schulich. And this has attracted an incredible group of students. The MBA in Technology Leadership is, imagine taking the traditional MBA, but then putting every single course through the lens of technology and venture and innovation. Even your finance courses are now being looked at in that way. So now the students come for the first 2 terms, and they take their academic courses and get all powered and prepped up. In the summer term, then which is the third term out of 4, they come to work with myself and my team in what's called the Schulich Venture Studio. And in the Schulich Venture Studio, which is a partnership with 111, the big accelerator downtown, run by the Ontario government, um, we take the students in there, and then we've recruited a group of companies that are on the precipice of raising their seed or their Series A round. The students spend the first half of the course being trained up by an elite group of instructors that have been brought in who are deep in the venture capital space and the product world. And what they're doing is they're helping the students to understand, how does a company need to be prepared from a product and a venture readiness perspective to go raise the money. And my analogy here would be, if you were going to take your race car out on a big race on the racetrack, you for certain would actually have the mechanics and have the team examine the car before it went out, right? And you would want a group that you trusted, that was impartial and independent, looking at that car. Well, this is what we're doing now for companies that are in the ecosystem, not Schulich startup companies; they're eligible to apply, but wider companies from the ecosystem. And so the companies then get teams of 3 of these top tech MBAs who have all been trained up, working with these experienced individuals from the ecosystem. And then they're working through the summer to prepare the companies to go out and raise. Everything from as straightforward as, like, do have they actually thought out well their data room and what needs to be in it, and how is that going to be done? What does the tour look like? Which VC to go first, second, third, and which ones to leave to the end, and how to, like, which ones actually have money, which ones don't, which ones are, like, currently investing in different things. So we've built this whole studio around helping these companies get prepped to go out and raise their funds. So I'm excited about both of those 2 initiatives, again, because they're about, how do we create game changing impact on the ecosystem, and also, as in the second example, how do we create more and more experiences for the students as they're coming through the Schulich School of Business to really get these moments that are, the academic classes are amazing and give them their foundation. But by the time they leave, we want them to have, like, actually battle tested their skills and what they're learning, and to put it into application and see how they do, build up their confidence. The last term of that tech MBA, by the way, then they go to a full-time internship as well too. And then the companies in the studio that are working with us could pick up some of that talent on the way through, have them work in the 4th term, and then hire them when they graduate.
That's quite clever. Um, Great programs. I mean, again, I would have loved to participate in some of them. And I'm, hopefully going to get more involved. It's been a great experience for me to get involved and come to the networking events, getting to know some of the students and networking with the other VCs and other startups in the ecosystem has been pretty valuable for me. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
My last question here is, Canada's been Canada has an interesting place in the global business community, or very closely tied to the United States. But if we look at a per capita basis, the United States blows us out of the water when it comes to entrepreneurship and venture capital investing and the like. What do you think we can do better here in Canada to foster a greater culture of entrepreneurship and risk taking and innovation to the extent that we need to?
There's so many things. So we'll just, like, tap on a couple. One, I think that we need to create a system where entrepreneurs who succeed are very well rewarded for the level, the risk that they're taking. And I think that as a country, we need to look at some of our fiscal or proposed fiscal policies related to how entrepreneurs are able to win when that happens. Um, but I'm going to add something that hasn't been in the conversation so far about that. I think, as part of that, that the entrepreneurs who are succeeding have an increased responsibility to play roles in leadership in the country as it relates to shaping the social community future of what we have. How do they spend their money when they exit? How do they bring that to bear in a way that builds better cities and better rural communities and better experiences for all of us? What leadership are they providing? Because I would challenge the current technology leadership and successful entrepreneurs within the country to say, I know they love to build more businesses. I know they love to invest more in entrepreneurship and give back to the startup community. They've done a good job of that. But when they rail against the idea of like, paying more with their exits into the country and into the system, on what basis do they think that the rest of the country feels a kinship to them in terms of like, what they have done to like lean back into making life better for their fellow Canadians? So I think there's a deeper conversation that's what's happening in terms of like, yes, I think that there needs to be more support for those upsides and those exits, but there also needs to be a deeper conversation inside the technology ecosystem in terms of what are we here to do in the first place? Are we here simply to make money? Are we here to make jobs? Great. But I think we're also here to do more and provide more to community and for people who are in need across all sorts of communities within the country. Um, and then lastly, I would say that we need to take the types of things that we are doing and other academic institutions, because there's a lot of really brilliant universities and colleges that are doing great things, and continue to invest in helping, younger and younger generations of Canadians understand that, being entrepreneurial is like a great opportunity for them, that this is something that they will be supported in, that they will be embraced, make that acceptable within family dynamics, that, if you decide not to be the investment banker and go to the startup path, that is a decision to be embraced not only when that young person succeeds down the road and then their family says, well, you did a good job, way to go, but actually celebrate them in that moment for taking that level of risk. My children already know that if they have a moment where they have like a business idea that they want to pursue or something they want to create in the world, that the door is open to come to me and to tell me that that's what they would like to do instead of any other particular career path. And we'll have that conversation. They may not want me involved because I'm their dad, but maybe they'll want me to help out, kind of thing. And I think more families need to embrace that as well.
That's a very interesting perspective. I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of what you're saying, especially on the cultural front. Like, it's not just about making money because you can change the tax code all you want and give people a bigger upside of their success. But a lot of someone's perspective should also be, what do I do with that money after? It shouldn't just be, well, I'm going to go and
The one thing I wish the one thing I wish the government had when I sold my company was I would have loved the ability, as opposed to just having the amount of my winnings that were taxed, right? I understand I want to give back in and I want to contribute to society. But I would like a recognition that there were also at least 7 years where I worked for $45,000 when I paid other people and didn't lay them off in order to build the
Mhm.
business. And I'd like a recognition that what those years that were sacrificed of my earning potential in order to build the business and build jobs and create wealth within the economy. And the last thing would be I'd like to be able to designate a portion of what the government mandates to take from me in that moment to a registered charity of my choice. So they could, say they were 100% of the component I need to surrender to the government when I sell. I would like 25% of that to be able to be designated to a charity to help the country that I choose, that I think is important, that it needs to go for, as long as it's a, you know, legit registered charity. I think that would have like felt a lot better than what happened when I sold the business and thought it's all going into the air.
I think that perspective would be pretty popular in the country. Thank you, Chris. I learned quite a lot. I know we've spoken a lot before, but I learned a lot from this conversation. And I hope everyone else learned as well something from Chris's experience. We're going to link to a lot of the programs Schulich does down below in the comments. So check it out. I highly encourage, even if you may not be a great fit, just to check it out, share it, or think about someone that would benefit from it, because there's a lot of programs for a whole host of people, entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and the like. Thank you again, Chris. And I'll look forward to seeing you again at another event.
Thanks, Madan.